Hey, everybody. Here we are again in the everyday craziness of America. If you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Jake, and you're watching gameplay while listening to my rants about all kinds of topics. In this video, we're going to cover some pretty significant historical events recently occurring in America, in addition to some of my other thoughts on all of these events unfolding. Let's just jump right in. On June 27th, 2024, the first presidential debate of this election cycle took place. Well, it certainly took place.
All those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare. When he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. And by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. That he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I had, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to
21
turn
Let's not act like children.
You
to
are
a
a child.
specific.
I think it's fair to say, not just based on polls around the debate by those who saw it, but also based on just the average American's perception and understanding, that the first presidential debate of 2024 was pretty reprehensible, as if the debates are ever good, really. Notably, Biden's performance sparked obvious and legitimate questions about his mental status. It's irresponsible to argue otherwise. There is something wrong with Biden. The presidential debate may seem like a bizarre moment, but I promise you, it's been a long time coming. Biden was showing signs of mental deterioration back in 2019-2020 during the Democratic primary of the previous election. The Democratic Party, if you couldn't tell already, is thoroughly incompetent. The Democratic Party exists as an obstruction mechanism working on behalf of the elites and overall ruling class. Compared to its more blatantly fascist and reactionary counterpart, the Republican Party, the Democrats, on the other hand, are much more subtle with their deception. While there are, of course, real and honest good faith actors within the blue political party in America, the corporate corruption in government has fully infected the Democrats as well. The Democratic Party in America exists as a vessel to control and filter any possible progressive change and revolutionary fervor. That controlled fervor is then channeled as yearning for that change from Americans into useful complacency for the enabling parent of Western liberal American democracy, that is the Democratic Party. Also, the elites can maintain their well-defended pocket of power. The Democratic Party has no interest in representing the true needs and wants of the American people. They may say they do, constantly referring to saving democracy, especially in this election cycle, but they don't actually care to represent their voters' needs, wants, anything in between. Like all other mainstream political factions, they have their own interests and motivations, which often do not align with the desires of American working people, surprise, surprise. While there are certainly somewhat promising members in the Democratic Party, as previously mentioned, social democratic reforms are probably not and will not end the empire, domestically or abroad. Or, well, the better way to put it is that it won't save it, rather. Even in the previous election, party antics were on full display.
I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. Mm-hmm. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true. Number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender when in fact my city was in flames because of the assassination of Dr. King. In terms of busing, the busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argued for. I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well,
I
there
did
was
not
a
oppose
failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision.
So that's where the federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
I have supported the ERA from the very beginning when I ran.
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds, because I want to bring other people into this.
I supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up.
Not only is Joe Biden clearly beginning to mentally decline, there's another interesting revelation. Kamala Harris obviously ended up as Joe Biden's vice president on the 2020 election ticket, and of course, as we all know, that ticket won and removed incumbent Donald Trump and VP Mike Pence. So, Kamala Harris grilling Joe Biden is arguably, or perhaps provably, pure spectacle. VP Harris herself is responsible for giving long-term criminal convictions to nonviolent drug offenders, and those who were arrested were overwhelmingly African American. It's so bizarre to see her invoking identity politics only to basically betray her own background. In addition, she is also a staunch and rabid Zionist, holding no significant difference in her views from Biden's. The common knowledge that Democrats and Republicans are spineless losers taking bribes and selling out their own voters is not readily apparent to Americans in a common conscious way, not just in an informational way. The depth of this corruption requires time to fully digest. This lengthy mental digestion exists because the American people have been intentionally rendered ignorant, made possible over a century-long attack on education. We do not have the linguistic and political tools to even describe or tackle the current level of capitalism's deterioration in this country because the influence of our corrupt government and capitalist tycoons wish us to be only the best obedient workers we could be. Since the nation's inception, America has utilized school as an instrument of indoctrination, where right-wingers are completely delusional to think woke ideology and critical race theory are brainwashing their children. The opposite couldn't possibly be more accurate. American education whitewashes our history, so do not be confused. This nation is fundamentally founded on indigenous genocide and African slavery. It's founded on second-class citizenship for women and overall subjugation for any person who isn't a rich white male. Americans are nervous and defensive to admit the truly evil past of this allegedly great nation. They're convinced this is the land of the free and the democratic. That, yeah, we might have some problems in America, but it's better than, well, where is it better than these days? And if it is better than those places, say, for example, South Sudan or Congo, How much does the United States have a role in the responsibility as to why whichever specific region is in turmoil? Americans understand the country is getting worse, but they don't know how to articulate that. Concepts like the third place and shrinkflation exist because a vacuum of let's say, for example, Marxist education prevents American working people from understanding the third place is just the concept of leisure, and shrinkflation is just the profit motive and other superstructure antics on display. The problems this country has are somewhat difficult to explain, but make no mistake, it's not complicated. These issues are not complex enough for any political normie or apolitical person to be truly denied a right to an opinion. So to any normal person listening who doesn't really consider themselves super political, please hear from a politically inclined person such as myself, full, clear, and loud. You are just as capable of understanding what's really going on as I am. The elites just want you to think otherwise. I promise you with absolute certainty, like any normal person who doesn't really care for politics, y'all can understand this too. The rich and powerful just want you to doubt yourself. As long as you're willing to learn, how could that ever be wrong? A fantastic example of how clearly solved our issues can be is the Supreme Court set of rulings released this summer of 2024. The American Supreme Court has been casually unraveling institutional remnants of the already weak liberal republic. The reversal of Roe v. Wade, for example, decision was one of the most unpopular Supreme Court rulings in American history. But since America has been going through so much insanity these last several years, that yet again, a monumental moment was just another day. The Supreme Court actually decided on many cases, but there are three that really stand out, showing where the institutions of this country have gone ideologically. The first one is they decided in a 6-3 decision with all the conservatives voting for it and all the liberals voting against it that every American president has, quote, some degree of immunity, unquote, in an official act. If you're wondering what constitutes an official act, you're not alone. No inclusion or definition for what an official act actually is was anywhere to be found. The court also overturned the Chevron doctrine. This doctrine basically stated that anytime Congress has not specifically addressed a specific dispute, the court would be required to uphold whatever specific federal agency's interpretation of their own jurisdiction and statutes, as long as the reasons were justifiable and within any agency's power. The conservative ghouls on SCOTUS weaved and worked specific legal language to justify this clear rollback of democratic involvement. Justifications like claiming the courts have less legal power when decisions are left to agencies. Justifications like the decisions can be more trustworthy when the power of all the decisions are consolidated in the courts. The problem is that the Supreme Court justices are glorified lawyers. The conservative justices specifically have been appointed to fabricate justified decisions that would benefit the wealthy and powerful from their donors. Federal agencies do important work. They carry the responsibility that the courts cannot physically handle, especially on a day-to-day basis. They have members and appointees who are not influenced or connected to the courts, allowing more wide representation. They prioritize employing experts and knowledgeable participants. These are not bloated entities with excessive administrative spending, despite what Fox News and other conservative outlets may tell you. The Supreme Court has given permission for cities in the third ruling. That's quite, I still can't get over this. Permission to for cities specifically. It might be to states as well, but I have to double check. It's for cities to criminalize people living unsheltered, even when there is no adequate shelter available. A city in Oregon, for example, won't even allow homeless people to sleep in tents or boxes. And I'm sure plenty of you have seen anti-homeless structures installed throughout the country just in America alone. While some other decisions included in the Supreme Court rulings were arguably positive outcomes, such as the very good domestic abusers can't have guns ruling, dissented by, of course, one and none other than the good old Clarence Thomas, the very clear trend is pointing towards institutional and societal deterioration. The anniversary of the treacherous Roe v. Wade overturning 2 years ago roughly now was also another decision of slowly whittling away what democratic aspects America may have left, as I mentioned before, giving the American court system more power concentrated into one set of hands, their hands, will only allow the courts to abuse their power even more. And then there's still the July 11th press conference that Biden had. On July 11th, 2024, Biden held a press conference to show voters, the media donors, and everyone else in between that he was still ready to do the job. And while it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, it wasn't exactly good. The press conference has many, many moments of President Biden stuttering, losing track of his thoughts in speech, and even saying Trump was his vice president. The press conference was one of many instances in recent public showings of Biden's true mental incompetence on display. As Cenk Uygur stated on a recent Piers Morgan show appearance, quote, "This was nothing short of elder abuse," end quote. Joe Biden is a war criminal and a political puppet. He's a racist and a creep. His competency renders him effectively useless. A dedicated politician through and through all of his life, the establishment and richest powers in this country wielded this typical corporate Democrat as any other iteration of the Clinton-era liberal politics. But that time has passed. He's genuinely just an old man with dementia or something. It's just sad. Even Trump during the presidential debate clearly felt like he couldn't go full gloves off on this old man. Trump probably saw himself in Biden, fearing that end result, which he will most likely see too. There's some comfort for thought in that sentiment, I'm sure. But the press conference, and speaking of Trump possibly dying, was only another Biden goof compared to the interesting events on Saturday, July 13th, 2024. Donald Trump had an assassination attempt on his sorry-ass life at a rally late afternoon in Pennsylvania, while literally eyeing a massive graph printout of so-called illegal immigration in the United States in recent years. The orange ghoul turned his head slightly, which caused the bullet to graze past his ear as he noticed something going on instead of entering his head. One other individual shot and perished before Secret Service authorities took out the shooter. Many details have come out about the attack, like the name of the shooter, their right-wing political inclinations, and the typical poster boy for American mass shooter. You know, if you can't tell I'm very apathetic to Trump before and after this news. My opinion of this spray-tanned orange has not changed. If anything, I think F around and find out. If anything, maybe Donald Trump shouldn't go around advocating for deporting protesters and immigrants. I don't think highly of someone who pays for commercials which advocate the death penalty for teenagers wrongly accused of assault. I don't think highly of someone who intentionally denies housing to Americans of color. I don't think highly of someone who sleeps with porn stars while his wife nurses their newborn baby. I don't think highly of someone who murders an Iranian official for political approval ratings. I don't really care about someone who incites reactionary violence for a faux coup on the Capitol. Just an insult to revolutionary tactics, if you ask me. So when violence comes to a person like that, do you feel bad for them? Should you feel bad for them? Are you even surprised? You tell me. If someone attempts to attack a putrid and fascist leader, how can any honest person see this as anything different than Donald Trump's comeuppance? After the RNC completed in Milwaukee, just a week later, they confirmed J.D. Vance for VP and confirmed Donald Trump for the 2024 Republican presidential nominee. One thing I will say, Trump looks like a different man at the rally, at the RNC rally specifically. There's a clear look of, oh, F, I just almost died on his face that might shake him up enough to change. But I won't get my hopes up. With the DNC coming up in Chicago in a few weeks, only time will tell what will happen next. There are even rumors Biden may make the announcement within the next few days to step down, perhaps allowing Kamala Harris to take... Okay, yep, there it is. Thus, we have finally reached what we all saw coming. Joe Biden has finally volunteered to step down from the presidency and offer full support to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has begun her presidential campaign in full swing, acquiring over $80 million on her first day. Campaign ads pumped out just in time for world imperial spectacle of the Olympics. Kamala Harris may invoke a different and progressive image, perhaps successfully, to convince American voters to deny Trump another 4-year term. But in my personal opinion, and I may be wrong, Kamala Harris will reveal herself in due time as yet another corporate and corrupt Democrat who fooled the American people to vote blue yet again, as change still hasn't come. Right change, good change, the change we need, and things continue to get worse. Speaking of world leaders, again, historic insanity continues in modern-day Rome 3 idiocracy boogaloo, as Benjamin Netanyahu arrived and spoke in Congress on July 24, 2024, giving a very Hitlerian speech. Just days after the World Criminal Justice Courts determined Netanyahu to be a war criminal, the American Congresspeople applauded the Philadelphia native spewing nothing but propaganda, blatant lies, and slandering towards the American people for over 30 minutes. He titled protesters useful idiots, acting in the interest or of straight-up bribed by Iran. This isn't too dissimilar to Pelosi's accusations of Russian bots. This is all indicative of the mass disconnect and overall total lack of real connection in America. Meanwhile, there are all kinds of other things going on as well. Did you know that North American wildfires have already burned 5 times the average area they burn by this time of the year? Wildfires have been very active in North America, and dual countries, America and Canada, continue to suffer not just the effects of climate collapse, but also, frankly speaking, their own comeuppance, as Western society, most notably Canada and America, have contributed especially America, have contributed greatly to world pollution. Many Californians have had to evacuate the state, and Canadian people have been evacuating all kinds of regions, most notably Alberta. Now, I'm not a Canadian person, nor am I even remotely knowledgeable in Canadian domestic and local politics, but I do know that Alberta is a very conservative region, as Jordan B. Peterson is from Alberta, and that region often votes conservatively in Canadian elections. Any of my North American cousins up north, Canadians, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it's a little ironic that a conservative region, for example, suffers the consequences of its own actions, even though there are people all around the world that are also suffering from the impact of Western civilization. In another historic development, Biden has introduced Supreme Court reforms in a last-minute edition occurring only at the end of July of this year, 2024. Not currently Sleepy Joe is proposing term limits in the face of Trump's immunity granted to his orangeliness from Trump's half-appointed conservative majority court. This is perhaps a small sign of hope, but we will yet to see if it is yet another distraction. Yet another piece of important news, and the last important news of this video. The leader of Hamas has also been assassinated during a visit to Iran. This individual was responsible for heading the ceasefire peace talks, so if you think this was a good thing, it really wasn't. This is not the first time the Israeli government assassinated a resistance leader while ceasefire talks were in the works. It is within the Israeli government's interest to keep the United States involved in their conflicts, so the current regime can justify its aggression with the financial and military backing of the most powerful and most corrupt empire in the history of the world. The Israeli economy prospers when they occupy Palestinian land, ethnically cleansing a native people so that they can develop new real estate for Western settlers. The genocide will continue as long as the Israeli government continues to exist as it is, a white supremacist, fascist, genocidal, imperial, patriarchal, racist, capitalist government acting as a puppet and proxy for Western interests in the West Asian region. God damn. So much needs to change, everywhere you look. So many things happening in so few days and weeks. And it seems a basic yet important question is beginning to bud and linger in the average American mind, and even to many non-Americans as well. The question is America beginning to collapse? Instead of answering this question head-on with a yes or no, I'm going to ask about some of the changes in American society that it's been enduring for the last few decades, and then you can decide with these questions what you personally think. Let's rock and roll. If a society is, having mass shootings occurring regularly, is that the sign of a healthy thing? Is a society healthy and stable with a for-profit healthcare industry, a racist police system? Tell me, what war has America not lost within the last 70 years, Apart from the embarrassing invasion of Grenada being arguably a success, what American foreign offensive has actually gone well? Did the coup with Pinochet work out? Did CIA-funded pseudo-communist Pol Pot work out? Did replacing the USSR with so-called free and liberal democracy make Asian and European people safer and freer? Or make Latin America and Africa safer? Did the Korean War go well for Americans, let alone Koreans? What about Vietnam? Antics in Cuba, genocide in Iraq, genocide in Palestine. What about Afghanistan, the Persian Gulf War? If assassination attempts occur on presidents in open fields and open areas while Secret Service agents ignore conservative hogs attempting to warn authorities of the suspect, is that the sign of a stable government with an iron grip on maintaining state hegemony? Does the Supreme Court criminalizing homelessness say this society is healthy to you? Does revoking abortion seem like a progressive society? Does giving any United States president immunity for any official act they conduct or commit sound like an unwavering institution? EPA and FDA regulation revocations, covert censorship and propaganda, including recently admitted U.S. government anti-vaccination campaigns, mass advertisement, pothole-ridden roads and suffocating but somehow still sprawling traffic. Land of the free, is that right? Plummeting home ownership rates and rising rent costs, horizontal and costly structural development dominating suburbia, water-hungry, non-biodiverse lawns, cookie-cutter my house is my castle abodes. Strange, this doesn't sound very strong. Supersaturated entertainment industry with oceans of starving artists, propped up by restaurant and fast food chains run by consistently underpaid workers. I mean, Jesus Christ, I could go on and on and on and on. The problem with material conditions in America is that these negative things aren't exactly immediately apparent to the average American. Now, are they? When you're in America, you're driving around in your 2017 Cruze or your 2019 Buick LaCrosse, and the windows are down, taking in the summer and warm air, and your hair is flowing in the wind, sun shining so bright. You see the nicely built neighborhoods, high-rise buildings in busy cities, quiet and lush countryside. Lit up store signs and streetlights, futuristic-looking consumer-oriented vehicles, mainstream inexpensive attire, high-budget television, movies, music, sports, and quote-unquote artsy displays. Sprawling suburbia, sprawling, it's everywhere. Endless concrete lakes of parking lots, seemingly infinite strip malls and online merchandise. The United States of America is built on many of the worst aspects of humanity. While modern-day Americans enjoy most of the things humanity has to offer, in this day and age, it is at the expense of so many others all around the world. Americans scream to the world that they are the best, that America is the land of the free and home of the brave. We tell ourselves and everyone else as well as this is where democracy is at. You're free here. The free market will liberate you. You will find destiny manifest in this diverse land. And you can have your own little castle, your own slice of land, your own mobile mini home, and so much more. Buy now and get one free today. DIY teach yourself YouTube videos, Zoom meetings, and classroom lectures posted online, pirated textbooks, online work and submissions, job postings and resume websites, but free college education and subsidized apprenticeships are too much to coordinate? Massive military-industrial complexes, advanced military weaponry, vehicles and other inventions of war, massive arms deal packages to imperial proxy nations, but safe schools and responsible but not oppressive gun control laws are out of reach? Game shows, reality TV shows, influencers and celebrities, lotteries and massive jackpots, breadcrumb tax returns and once-in-a-lifetime stimulus checks, but providing basic needs for all Americans is not a practical goal? Cheat days for overly managed diets of deeply toxic sustenance and excessively sized serving portions of American food. Binge watching to occupy your attention and placate your boredom. Weight watching and keto. Normalized cereal for dinner. Fat loss pills and protein shakes. Calorie counting apps, Fitbits, and getting daily steps in. But comprehensive exercise and cooking instruction for all is just too much? Driving cars in straight lines, forced to focus entirely on the road, moving at wildly high and dangerous speeds too close to other vehicles, your attention fully demanded and your eyes often staring at the road while your arm searches for whatever you need in the center console or passenger seat, because God forbid you can look 2 seconds away from the road. While at the same time, having the flashiest presentations with these cars, the better late than never quality of life upgrades, ABS plastic installed all over every other vehicle like golden Sharpie for cars. Ridiculous car commercials invoking the most irrelevant topics for marketing. But high quality, widespread, and accessible public transportation is just too much. Trains, man, I want trains. We can't have trains in America? Where's our trains? I want to go zoom, and we can't go zoom on a train. What the hell? Supersaturated sugar in every food item. Banned in Europe but somehow still allowed in America. Forever chemicals. Ultra-processed food, garbage and animal feed, mass animal slaughtering, non-stop picking cow and goat and chicken and lamb consumption, polluting the planet, fracking, pipelines, burning fossil fuels everywhere you look, killing species all across the globe, reducing biodiversity on a mass scale, poisoned air and water. But green living and environmentalism is not an achievable goal? And perhaps one of my most hated characteristics of American culture, while still being one of the most omnipresent qualities we have, inauthenticity, or in other words, fakeness. Fake personalities everywhere you look, fake demeanor, surface-level kindness and empty community, a settler, colonial, white supremacist, patriarchal capitalist empire upholding the cultural ruse that everything is great, I'm living the dream, when anyone is asked the obligatory, how's your day going, in every single interaction. Filtered pictures, reshoots, reboots, remasters, we'll fix it in post, go-tos, practice my smile in front of the mirror, selfies, surgeries, cosmetic adjustments of all kinds, placeholder answers and substitutes of real one in the face of any interaction, whitewashed history, propaganda entertainment machine, and flashy products to sell everywhere you look the moment out the door. Yeah, this is certainly a society of real ones for sure. Do you see the picture I'm painting? Do you see like what for us what we really are? Like I don't have the answers. I can barely explain some of our problems. It's all too big to succinctly describe and even harder to fully understand. But I know, as so many others do, that something is going on. I know that we all agree on so much of what is wrong. I know that Americans love everything about communism except the terms communists use. I know that Americans don't want to be the bad guys. I know that there is a real quest in every American spirit, every human spirit too, but this is mostly directed to Americans in this situation specifically, that we all deserve better, that we can do better, we can pursue better. But that betterment has not come from what we thought would help us. We prayed to gods even when they stood silent. We worshipped kings and queens while they took and flaunted everything. We praised tycoons and heirs of wealth as innovators and job creators. And what do we have to show for it? Do you sleep well at night knowing you or some of those you care about are a few financial burdens away from homelessness? Do you enjoy the dying nature all around you? Do you like subsidizing employee wages with tips? Are you happy knowing our drug addiction and suicide rates are increasing? Is it good that young Americans want to start a family but can't because of financial stresses? Can you not see the prices rising while your pay stays the same? Do you not see the signs of social decay? Do you not see the plain look of something missing on everyday Americans' faces? Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong. But there are too many problems and too many voices asking for help for us to ignore. Every human success has come from humanity and the earth we were born from. A person and the people around them, the people before and the people after them too. All of our problems we have now are in our hands. The first start to solving our problems is admitting that we have them, and we can build something way better from there. We just have to believe. We just have to be willing to take it. We just have to be willing to unite. We just have to be willing to take responsibility even when we don't feel ready. We must personally take action and directly make the changes ourselves. We must change our home if we want something better. Educate yourself. Spend a few minutes here and there catching up on an issue you know you should know more about. Ask open-minded questions to people with wildly different lived experiences than you. Trust that we all want to get along and work together. Organize yourself in groups, unions, communities, classes, what have you, and help rebuild the community that has been alienated all around us. We can make the change. We can make the difference. We just have to be willing to try. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you can. Feel free to let me know what you think and what else you might want to see. I hope you liked the video. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.